Well, I think this is a good segue into the topic of motherhood slash parenthood. And as we already mentioned, we all have two children. We had them relatively early in our careers. And I just wonder what thoughts or memories or advice or just any reflections or observations either of you have on that part of your faculty experience.
I guess I would describe having kids before tenure as the best thing I ever did and the worst thing I ever did. I don't have to go on and on about the joys of having kids and the richness it brings to your life. And I have zero regrets on that for sure. But, anyone on the tenure clock understands that the pressure is intense and it feels like you just don't have enough hours in the day to do all the things that you're supposed to do, get your work published, teach your classes, attend conferences, seminars, write referees reports, network, and spend time with your spouse and children. So that doing all of that is pretty difficult. And honestly, I had a stay-at-home husband. I had who really was made it possible for me, I felt like. So people that can do it and having two working parents working full time, especially in, very intense jobs, I give them lots of credit because it's just not easy to do. And so I guess a couple memories of that time is I remember being sick a lot and being a little run down all the time. I also have memories of missing a few family vacations and where my family would go off and do something fun or visit relatives, and I would stay behind and try to get research done. So at the time, I felt like that is what I had to do to keep up with everything. I also have memories of not, so being in the associate dean role, uh, I guess I'm seeing things differently. And I think part of it is times have changed since 30 years ago when I had kids. And part of it is also just a change in attitude, like take advantage of your university's benefits and don't forego those opportunities to lighten your load whenever possible. So, my daughter was born in September of the first year on faculty. And so I chose to delay my start to January so that I would have time with the baby. But, thinking back on it, it's like, well, I didn't have to do that. I could have, started officially and gotten paid instead of not getting paid. And then my second daughter was born in June, so I didn't take a leave for that. So I think, now I did have the tenure clock extension. So that's something that has been in place for a very long time, and I benefited from that. But I think what I see as an associate dean is that there's some reluctance for some people to take leave, to take family leave, and to take advantage of some of the benefits that universities offer. And that might be because they feel like, oh, I don't want to create a problem for my department head or whatever their reasons are. But that was one thing that I would say is for faculty to really be aware of what are the policies at your university. And I think if you're worried about asking, your department head or someone in your college, Central HR has all of that information. And that's what I would advise is that they make an appointment with Central HR representative, find out all the options available and, take advantage of their benefits.
Great point. Thanks, Diane. Yeah, Jennifer, I see you nodding.
Yeah, no, a lot of the same things and very much the same feelings. I was 30 when I finished my PhD, and I had been married for a year, and we knew we wanted a family. And I remember thinking, kids now or wait till I have tenure? And waiting till tenure would have been close to 40. And of course, many people become parents then, but it is a little bit more risky. And I asked myself if I could only have one of kids or tenure, which was more important to me. And for me, it was kids. So I went ahead and did have my children. But then I spent the next 8 years always feeling guilty that I had two full-time jobs and I love them both, but I felt like I wasn't doing either one of them quite to my best full capacity. When I was home, I felt like I should be at work. And when I was work, I felt like I should be home. So that was challenging. I turned 40 and then I did have both tenure and kids. So 40, turning 40 was fabulous. Um, the other thing I remember is, and this has changed, this is where things have definitely changed, was I felt I had to hide my parenting activities. So I had a lot of off-campus meetings when I was picking up my kids from school or going to the doctor, pediatrician's appointment or things like that. And I think now all parents have it's much more normal and acceptable to say, no, I have to go PTA or meeting with the kids, or my kid's sick and I'll be home today. And that's fine. And that's important. I think that is life is part of who we are, and we need to respect and honor that and make sure that there's room for that in the professional setting. So
And do you feel, Jennifer, and I'm curious if for you, Diane, too, that even among, untenured, tenure track faculty, that there is more, it's just more acceptable. People, yeah, that's good. That's good. I always wonder, even now when I reflect back, I wonder, I'm trying to think how to say it, like how much of some of the negative aspects of my experience stemmed from my overly narrow assumptions about what was or was not going to be acceptable, or what I needed to do to sort of fit in. I still remember when I was at PhD student orientation, not my own, but I was attending as like a more senior student to sort of meet with some of the new students. And there was a faculty member, a man in another department, who was speaking, and he gave the advice to the room to not have kids before you get tenure. This is what he said to a bunch of incoming PhD students. I was lucky because I had an advisor who is a woman and who had kids before tenure. And when I told her that, she was irate. So I was really lucky to have that modeling. Not everyone has that. People hear those messages and they really take them to heart. The other thing, Diane mentioned it, sort of like the best thing she did, and maybe the worst thing or the easiest, I don't remember the words, having kids before tenure. The one thing that I often tell people is it is the only thing, maybe the first thing in my life, that allowed me to create boundaries. I think if I had not had them, and I was lucky because the birth of my first kid kind of coincided with starting my faculty position. I wasn't going to be working 24/7. I was not. The one thing that I told many people was, I am not willing to tolerate losing the first, 7-ish, whatever the number is, years of my kids' lives, missing that entirely, and then not getting tenure anyway. Like that was, I could not tolerate that possibility. And so, like both of you, whatever, I left early sometimes to pick the kids up from school, to take them to appointments. Then I worked after they went to bed. Whatever, you try to cobble things together. Had it not been for them, though, I'm pretty sure I would have just been working all the time. And I don't know that the outcome would have been any better professionally. I think I would have been a much less happy person, um, because it was really, really important to me to have kids. I was lucky to be able to do that.